Hello and welcome back to the Healthcare Uncomplicated YouTube channel. Today I have another very interesting episode for you. Before I go ahead, let me remind you to subscribe to the channel and also check all the previous content there. But without further ado, let me introduce you to Michael Howell. He's the Chief Clinical Officer at Google. Michael, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks for accepting my invite. We're talking about before the recording about our busy schedules, and I appreciate that you are here.
You bet.
So, the topic today is what healthcare leaders should know about generative AI. And the first to start with, Michael, could you tell us a little bit about your background, please?
Yeah, I'm a pulmonary and critical care doc between, I guess, 1995 and 2017. I was either training or practicing, took care of a lot of patients. I ran parts of health systems, mostly focused on quality, safety, experience, and value. And then did a bunch of research in an area called healthcare delivery science, which is trying to use research quality math, but at real world speed to make things better. I joined Google. I just started my 7th year at Google. And so I've gotten to be part of getting to build up the work that Google has done over the past few years.
Fantastic. I go straight to another question, which is what is Google doing in health?
Yeah, we do a few things. So our mission is billions of healthier people, and we take that very seriously. So Google has a number of products that more than 2 billion people use every month. And we think about 3 values that we lens all our work through: evidence, equity, and ethics. And we take those very seriously. So let me take the first one, which is around evidence, for a second. We publish routinely in medical journals like JAMA and New England Journal and Nature. And I often get asked, why? Why do we do that? And it's not because journal editors move at the speed to which Google is accustomed. It's because we think it's important to show our work. The math is hard here. We think that peer review can help with the math. And so we have, north of 150 scientific publications in healthcare over the past, 7, 8, 9 years. So we take those values very seriously. And then we think about 3 areas where we can lean in and be helpful to people in their health. The first is that we want to help people in their daily lives. And so we call that consumer health. And so what do we mean there? We mean hundreds of millions of people every day come to search and ask questions about their health. We have to be good at giving responses like that, giving them helpful answers to their questions. We mean that more than 100 billion videos that are related to health get viewed on YouTube every year. And we work hard to lift up credible content, authoritative content. And then we mean things like sensors, like on a watch or on your phone, give people the ability to understand their health and wellness in ways that were just impossible before. So we have a thing on the Pixel Watch that helps people monitor for potential signs of atrial fibrillation as an FDA-cleared device is in many countries, things like that. So that's the first bucket, helping people with consumer health. The second is caregivers, by which we mean doctors, nurses, hospitals, community health workers, everywhere in between. We do a lot of work with cloud, which helps enterprises like hospitals use modern tools like AI. We've also done a lot of work to bring computer vision to bear, breast cancer screening, lung cancer screening. And then the third C, so consumers, caregivers, the third C is community, because we know that where we live, work, learn, and play determines the majority of our health outcomes. And so we do a lot of work where we've made data sets available to researchers in public health. We've seen those used in thousands of papers. But we also, when we say health is more than healthcare, let me give you an example of something we mean. In many parts of the world, floods are immediately life-threatening. The machine learning to predict where a floodplain will be is very difficult, but the teams have worked it out. Last year, we sent more than 150 million alerts to people primarily in India and Bangladesh about floods that were potentially property or life-threatening. And we've expanded that to 80 countries. So we have a number of things like that, that we would all agree that floods are impacting of millions of people's health. But we don't think about them in the context of healthcare. So consumers, caregivers, community context.
Brilliant. That's truly fascinating. And of course, you're creating a big impact. Moving on, we don't often see chief clinical officers at big tech brands. How did you end up at Google?
Yeah, it's been an amazing privilege. And so my job now is our thesis was that if you're making something for health, usually the way you do it is you have a product lead and a technical lead or an engineering lead, and maybe a design person. And clinicians are used as subject matter experts. Our thesis was that products are made by 1,000 little decisions along the way. And for products that are really important to health, having someone with a clinical background be in the mix of that, of the 1,000 little decisions, would end up with better products. Turns out to be true. And so now my job is that I oversee the teams of docs and nurses and psychologists who are embedded in teams that do a lot of work in health around Google.
Brilliant. Fantastic, Michael. And that combination is much needed. So you have the understanding of both sides. The next question is, what are new capabilities in AI models over the next year or two?
Yeah, we've been talking about AI for, 50, 60, 70 years at this point. And it's important to understand that the AI we're talking about at the end of 2023 is different than the AI that we were talking about at the beginning of 2021. And so I think about there being three epochs of AI or three ages of AI. The first, AI 1.0, it's not an official term, but it's helpful for my brain to have it this way. AI 1.0 is symbolic AI, where you encode things, you encode human knowledge into if-then rules or a decision tree. Think of IBM's Deep Blue was an amazing accomplishment that encoded a bunch of knowledge and very clever ways of search. We see that today in many forms of clinical decision support that are just encoded human logic. AI 2.0 is deep learning. Really amazing moment in 2011 when computers developed the ability to see the world around them, to understand images. Deep learning has led to all of these advances that you see in the fact that you can search through your phone, all your photos for pictures of cats or your dog or where did I eat without having to manually go in and tag them. Like you and I are old enough to remember having to tag photos. In healthcare, the AI 2.0, the deep learning era, has done things like breast cancer screening algorithms, lung cancer screening, things like that. That roughly is about a decade, 2011 into sometime between 2018 and 2022. Unbelievable advances. But the really important thing about this kind of AI is it does one thing at a time. Does this picture show lung cancer or not? Does this picture show a cat? It doesn't. You can't ask it to do many different things. And it doesn't, for the most part, create content. There's a big, important technical advance that happened in 2018 with the creation of the transformers model. Big step forward. That paper has been cited more than 80,000 times at this point. That's how important that paper is. Happened at Google. It's the transformers or the T in GPT. And what happens with generative AI is this really important step change. Generative AI can do many different things without retraining on a brand new data set and building a new category of model. So it can understand context in language. It can create language that sounds like it's coming from a human. Different kinds of it can create images that have never existed before. There's even one that does music. And so what are we seeing in healthcare? Our teams built a medically tuned language model called MedPalm. And here's what MedPalm is able to do. There's a set of questions that is roughly like a medical licensing exam, multiple choice questions, which any physician has taken a million of these. So you recognize the type. And the nice thing about this data set is people have been working on it for several years and getting better 2%, 3%, 5% at a time. And so if you go all the way up to November 2022, almost 1 year ago exactly from when you and I are talking, the best in the world was 50% accuracy on that. MedPalm in December of 2022 hit 67%. People say passing is about 60%. And by May, MedPalm was at 85, 86% accuracy on that, which is sort of as good as an expert physician test taker. We're going to see continued development of capabilities like that. We're already seeing that with MedPalm. We're seeing the ability for it to take images and language, let you have a conversation with a chest X-ray. And it's probably the fastest pace of technical development that I've seen in my career.
Wow, that's incredible. So things are actually evolving and progressing really, really fast. Those numbers are fascinating. And of course, generative AI is here to stay. Moving on, we have seen a number of reports about bias in AI systems, both in older prediction systems and in chatbots. How are you thinking about this?
Yeah, if we go back to the AI 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0 framework, there are different kinds of biases that can show up in each of those. So AI 1.0, encoding human knowledge, depends on the people who are putting the knowledge in, easily susceptible to bias. AI 2.0, deep learning, has many kinds of potential bias. One of the most important is that the healthcare system itself is unfair, and that it's not filled with health equity, it's filled with disparity, and data encodes the unfair experiences in the data set. In addition, the ways that the data are collected can be biased in and of themselves. And so, of course, an algorithm trained on top of that will recapitulate those. AI 3.0, generative AI, creates a new kind of risk of bias that's really important, which is these models are trained primarily, the language models are trained primarily to predict the next word in documents. That's how they're trained. They learn the semantics of what they're trained on. And if you say, oh, go read all of these things, well, first, there are many dark corners of the internet. And so you need to filter some of those out. Even once you filter them out, our language itself has bias encoded in it as semantic bias. And so how are we thinking about it? We think about it all the time. The first is that we have a specific health equity team led by Ivor Horn, who's a nationally noted expert in health equity, to help develop ways to detect bias and mitigate it. And I'll give one example from MedPalm of something that Ivor's team has done. So when you have these algorithms that can interact with you like MedPalm can, you can ask it a question and it will write you an answer. Well, it doesn't just do multiple choice. So one of the amazing results from MedPalm is we took a bunch of questions that real people ask. We open sourced them so any researcher could use them. We gave them to the model. And so this is for MedPalm 2, and said, model, write an answer like you're answering a patient. And we hired a bunch of doctors and we said, doctor, write an answer like you're answering a patient. And we took those answers and we gave them to another doctor to grade which one was better. We did that on 9 dimensions. And in May with MedPalm 2, blinded physicians preferred the answers from the model over those of other physicians, overwhelmingly on 8 of 9 axes.
Oh, wow.
One of the ways that we evaluate bias is we ask the grading physicians, is there evidence of demographic bias in this answer? And they found that the model had less than physicians as they were writing. But the second, and this part is really important, is that the health equity team developed an adversarial question set. And what is an adversarial question set? It's questions designed to break the model, to elicit all the problems in the model related to equity or related to other issues. And so they tested the model's performance with these adversarial questions related to equity, specifically for the question that you're asking about. And you can read all about it in the MedPalm 2 paper. Well, it's a really good piece of work the team did.
That's so important. It's truly fascinating. Moving on, the next question links very nicely with it. Taking care of patients is more than just text recognition. How is
Yeah.
AI handling that?
Yeah, there are two ways I could interpret your question. One is much of care will always be physical. We have bandages, we have broken bones. Like AI is not dealing with a huge amount of care that will always be physical. The second, though, is in technology, when we're taking care of patients, we look at notes that other people wrote, labs, x-rays, CAT scans, EKGs. Medicine is inherently multimodal. One of the big advances that happened in August of this year, just to give you, like if we were having this conversation this time last year, totally different conversation. Everything I'm talking about has happened in the past year. In August, we started talking about multimodal AI. And what multimodal AI does is it takes the representation that a language model learns and the representation that an imaging model learns, like a chest X-ray algorithm, and it figures out how to fit those together in a way where you can use the capabilities of the language model to ask questions of images. So, as an example, you can have a conversation with a chest X-ray. Hey, does this chest X-ray show pulmonary edema? Yes. Which side is it on? Both sides. How bad is it? It's mild. Is there a pleural effusion? No. In the same way that you might have a conversation with another colleague who's helping you interpret an X-ray. It's a technically difficult thing to do to figure out how to weld these models together. And so there are different approaches to it. But we're starting to see very good results from things that bring together regular human language, medical text, and medical imaging. And I think we expect that will continue.
Brilliant. Michael, the next question that I have for you is healthcare is highly regulated. Is that a barrier to AI here?
We think that AI is too important to not regulate and regulate well. We think that it should start with regulations that already exist. So, as an example, in the United States, HIPAA in many ways has really stood the test of time in protecting people's privacy and giving very clear guardrails about how to behave in a responsible manner. It was much more difficult before HIPAA, and so our view is that well-designed, thoughtful regulation can encourage innovation by helping folks like us know we want to color inside the lines. We have to know what the lines are. We saw a big advance that we're still working through yesterday with the executive order around AI. And we're excited both in the US and in Europe and in other parts of the world for there to be regulation that makes sense, that helps guide companies with guardrails to protect people while encouraging innovation.
Yeah.
The place where this will go wrong is if there are many different regulatory frameworks that don't agree with each other. That would be a problem. Otherwise, we think regulation is important and critical to help innovation happen faster.
Absolutely, as long as the regulation is appropriate, as you mentioned in different words, it is not a barrier. Moving on, what should health systems and health system leaders be thinking about right now?
Yeah, I've talked to many health system leaders about this question, and I think that there are a few things. So one is this is an important technical step change. It's a big deal. It's not a rounding error of technological capability. I think that consumers and patients, or if you're an insurance plan, members are going to expect this way of interacting with you because they're beginning to see it in the rest of their lives. That's one part of what health system leaders should be thinking about. The second part is that your employees, or if you teach medical students or nursing students or residents, your learners, your workforce, they will come to expect this way of interacting with you. We're seeing signs of that. We're talking to folks as well. And so people will need to think about a two-pronged strategy related to that. I think that there's a spectrum in health systems between ordering paper clips, really important, turns out if you don't have paper clips, like things don't work, to sewing a valve into a human being's heart. We expect that people start over on the paperclip side of things, but that many things that get thought about as administrative have direct impact in improving people's care by reducing complexity out of the health system. If you take prior authorization, for example, it's easy to think of that as just a financial problem or bureaucratic problem, but shortening the time to getting an answer with prior authorization means that real people get treated sooner. And you can just recapitulate that across administrative areas. I think we'll see it starting there, and I think we'll see things moving more and more and more into the directly clinical arena over time. And I think that health systems should begin thinking about and starting processes for AI governance today, if they don't already have AI governance places in place. It's going to be a little bit different than the way that we thought about technology before.
Yeah, fantastic. Certainly, AI governance is extremely important, linked to the regulation, but also many health systems, Michael, probably don't even have a AI strategy. Some of them, they're just kind of picking up the agenda and starting the inroads, which is things are advancing so fast. I'm sure
They
you
are.
talk to a lot of people that facing many, many challenges. The last question that I have for you, Michael, is: will ever AI replace doctors?
I don't think AI is going to replace doctors, but I think that doctors that use AI will replace doctors that don't. And I'll give an example. My mom was an accountant, and she was a CPA, had her own little practice, and had there were a couple of summers that I worked for her because I didn't want to mow lawns, and I did bookkeeping for little small businesses. And I'm old enough that there was a physical ledger, like a book of paper, and you would write down numbers in columns and you would add them up with an adding machine. And I would always like lose 25 cents. And my mom was like a savant. She could always find the 25 cents I lost. But then, somebody invented Lotus 123, and then, eventually like accounting software. And a couple of things happened. One is accountants did not go away. Their work became more strategic. The second thing that happened, though, is that the ability to keep great books, high quality books, became democratized. That millions more people could keep high quality books and be overseen intermittently by an accountant, rather than needing to have an accountant do all the work themselves. I think we'll see that AI may democratize expertise overseen by professionals over time.
Brilliant. That's such a nice comparison, and there's a nice connotation there, Michael. Truly amazing conversation. Thank you so much again for your amazing expertise, your time, and your input. We could talk for hours. We could talk for a long, long time. It's so much
We
to
could.
discuss. I have one last little thing to ask you, which is related to the channel. I expect a nice short answer, which is: how can we make healthcare uncomplicated?
Health health is complex, but there are many layers of complicatedness that are layered on by the health system. And the more that we can take away from that to keep the doctors and nurses at the bedside with people who need their help, the better off we're going to be.
Fantastic. What a fantastic way to round up. Michael, thank you so much again. Nice
Thanks
to
for
see
having me.
you. No, thank you so much for your amazing work and for this incredible contribution to the industry. That's why I actually interview global leaders every week, to share their expertise and contribute to the industry. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to round up now. To all our viewers and listeners, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also acknowledge our channel partners. I'm also going to post some links in here in the body of the YouTube for you to connect socially with Michael. Check the amazing work in AI at Google and everything else. And I'll see you all next time.